So he may not be doing spectacularly well in our 1v1 matchups so far. The Lion has proven time and again that he can certainly pump out damage with the best of them, but he's just not all that good at taking it. So while he's not quite as killy as Angron or as good at buffing as say Guilliman, what if we try putting him up against not a Primarch, but one of the more fearsome creations of a Xenos race, in particular the Avatar of Khaine. Now, we all know that lore-wise, avatars are pretty much the punching bag of the 41st millennium. They've been beaten by pretty much everyone. Fulgrim, Calgar, even a stampeding horde of Carnifexes all have an avatar kill to their name. But that's in the lore. Let's see just how good they actually are on the tabletop. And on the face of it, with a toughness 8, 2 up, 4 up, save and halving incoming damage for just 280 points, they do seem pretty damn tanky, but can the Lion do enough damage to punch through all of those defences? As with our previous videos, we'll do a round where the Lion gets the charge and then a round where the Avatar does, and each will get to shoot before they get into combat. We will just be using the datasheet rules, so there will be no stratagems or external buffs. The only thing which is probably worth mentioning, because it's kind of tricky to account for, is the Strands of Fate for the Avatar. What this does is essentially gives you the potential to have a couple of dice rolls which count as an automatic 6, but it is a random roll, and whilst you can influence it to a certain degree, there is no guarantee that in a real life scenario the Avatar would have exactly what he wants or needs to help him out in these fights. So just for the sake of fairness, I think what we will say is that when the Avatar is being attacked, he will have 1 dice he could use for a saving throw, and when he is doing the attacking, he will have 1 dice that he could use for his hit roll. I know that won't necessarily be completely accurate as to how it would play out in a game, but it just seems to me to be a reasonable balance between what you could realistically expect to have on the battlefield and also not swinging things too far in the Avatar's favour. So with that housekeeping aside, let's dive into combat. And as always, being the newest model on the block, the Lion is going to go first. Firing his Armor Luminous into the fiery molten body of the Eldari demigod, he manages to get 1.9 hits with the bolt profile and 0.83 with the plasma. The bolter is only wounding on 6s thanks to T8, and also thanks to the Avatar's 3-up save after AP, that means just 0.12 unsaved wounds go through. And although they are 2 damage, that is halved thanks to the Avatar's molten form, so it is just 0.12 damage in total. The plasma does fare slightly better as it's wounding on 4s, and it does force the Avatar to its 4-up invuln, but even with all that, it is just 1 shot, so it ends up doing 0.2 unsaved wounds, and again, having its 2 damage drop down to 1 means that his entire shooting profile causes just a pitiful 0.32 wounds to the Avatar before the Lion gets into combat. However, he does then charge into melee, and as we all know, this is where he really shines. He has his reroll 1s to hit and to wound thanks to Primarch of the 1st Legion, and he would of course use the strike profile, as you might have guessed, to make his awesome 11 attacks into the Avatar. He gets 10.6 hits, and at strength 10, this turns into 8.3 wounds. As always, his AP -5 cuts through any semblance of armor the Avatar may have and leaves him on just his 4-up invuln. Now, if the Avatar uses his Strands of Fate dice, that means one of those saves is automatically passed on a 6, and in total, just 3.6 unsaved wounds go through. Now, that would be enough to kill him, doing 14.6 damage with the flat 4 from fealty, except of course the Avatar halves damage, meaning when he uses a Strands of Fate dice on a save, the Avatar would likely only take 7.3 damage in total, leaving him almost at half health. But then even if you didn't have a Strands of Fate dice for that automatic 6 on your saving throw, that still means that around 4.15 unsaved wounds go through, and at 4 damage again, this would turn into 16.6 damage, but We have to remind ourselves, of course, the Avatar has that half damage ability, meaning that 16.6 damage actually turns into just 8.3 onto the monstrous creature. So with 14 wounds, the Avatar remains very much alive and kicking, whether you use a Strands of Fate dice for an automatic pass or not. As a quick aside as well, before we move on, if we use the sweep profile for the Lion to get the 22 attacks, that actually performs worse. That only nets a total of 8 damage into the Avatar, which is then of course half down into just 4. So even with the insane 22 attacks, the fact that you are wounding on 5s and dropping to just 2 damage instead of 4 even before it gets halved, it just means the strike profile is far, far superior for the Lion going into the Avatar. But as we mentioned, the Avatar does indeed live, and he now gets to swing back into the Lion. Whether he takes 7 or 8 wounds depending on the Strands of Fate roll, it still more than likely leaves him in his middle bracket, which means he has 6 attacks and he's strength 7 base, his sword is ×2, so he will be hitting the Lion at strength 14. Now he will of course be in combat as the Lion charged, so he can't fire his Wailing Doom, it is assault and not a pistol. But even without that, in the strike profile with his sword, he will be hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s thanks to that ×2 strength. And being extremely confident as Eldari players are, I'm not going to use a Strands of Fate dice for an automatic hit. I will redo the maths if he ends up needing it, but I just want to see what happens if he doesn't use any Strands of Fate for a quote-unquote worst case scenario. Like the Lion, his sword has a whopping -5 AP, so it pushes through all of the Lion's armor and forces him onto his 4-up in-run. And with his 6 attacks, the Avatar doesn't have any rerolls, so he gets 5 hits through, which turns into 4.16 wounds. The 4-up in-run from the Lion drops this to 2.08 unsaved wounds. But here's where the Avatar gets really nasty, because the damage profile for his sword is d6 plus 2 damage, meaning an average of 5.5 damage per swing. You may be able to tell where this is going. So all of that adds up after saving throws to around 11.4 damage onto poor JONSON, making for one very dead, one very barbecued Primarch. And even with the Emperor's Shield pinging back just under 1 mortal wound onto the Avatar, that still won't even come close to stopping him before he can turn the Loyalist Primarch into shish kebabs. So unfortunately, the Avatar, even if he gets charged by the Lion and takes a shooting attack and, 11 hits from fealty, can pretty much just tank it all and then one-shot the Lion and still be on pretty much half health. And obviously this isn't needed, just for the sake of completion. If the Avatar does manage to go first and get the charge off, his shooting attack as well is a very scary Assault 1, Strength 12, -4 AP, d6 plus 2 damage beam. So that means that before he even starts swinging, he can expect to do around 0.8 hits, 0.5 wounds, of which 0.27 are unsaved. So even before he charges into combat, the Avatar can do about 1.5 damage to the Lion, which compared to the 0.3 that the Lion could do to the Avatar, just kind of already sets the ball rolling for how this fight is going to go. And of course, if the Avatar does manage to charge in, he won't be at middle bracket, he'll get to fight first, so he will have an extra attack as well. So even without using any Strands of Fate dice, if the Avatar gets the charge in, he is just going to do an unbelievable amount of damage to Lionel Johnson. And of course, as we just saw, even if the Lion does shoot and get the charge off, the Avatar can more than likely, even without a Strands of Fate dice, survive it and just hit back and kill him. Overall, it just shows that once again, for supposedly one of the premier duelists in the setting, the Lion just can't get the job done. And bear in mind, the Lion is not only 40 points more than the Avatar, but the Avatar is still really quite healthy after this fight. It's not like he's on to his last 1 or 2 wounds. He should be sitting tall on around 6 to 8 wounds left. So he's very likely still in his middle bracket, and he is still going to be able to go around, kill other stuff, be really survivable, tank a load of shots, and give some solid buffs to the units around him. He lets them ignore attrition tests, and also grants a reroll charge aura. He just seems to be yet another HQ that is just all around better than the Lion is. He is cheaper, he is much killier, he is much more durable, and I would say he's at least similar in terms of buffing potential for the rest of the army. And yes, he is 14 wounds base, so he can't get Lookout Sir protection, which I will admit is a huge benefit for the Lion and for Guilliman. But it just seems that even using the strike profile, if you put the Lion up against enemy characters and HQs, which lore-wise is sort of what he should be amazing at taking out, he kind of just bounces off the Avatar, doing not really all that much damage, and then gets unceremoniously swept aside by the Eldari demigod. So there we go, that is another 1v1 done. The Lion is currently 0 for 3 so far, but there are still plenty of enemy HQs for him to face off against. But as always, I would really love to know what your thoughts are on this fight. Did it go how you were expecting? And how do you think the Lion should be made better? I know 10th is coming, so it's largely an irrelevant point. But if 9th edition was sticking around for another year or so, how would you like to see the Lion buffed to just make him, maybe not killier, because I do think he does a good amount of damage, but just buffing his durability so that he can actually survive a hit back if he doesn't manage to kill his target in one go? Let me know your thoughts and ideas down in the comments below. I really do love to read them. Some of them are really insightful and just entertaining to think about. But as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Any suggestions for who else you would like to see the Lion go up against as well? Let me know, because obviously there are plenty of HQs to do, but I only have so much time, so I kind of have to prioritize who I'm going to do. So if there's any you'd really like to see, let me know and I will get them done ASAP. And as always, please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.